from start to finish. Okay, so a client might come in and they may have a brief. I would hope they have a brief, a really good brief. And then, you know, they don't always have the solution. It hasn't been challenged, or, you know, that we have a lot of questions. So it's like, you know, like I referred back to, if you want to buy a car, what kind of car, why, what do you need to do? Is it just to get to A and B, or is it to make a statement? What is it for? What are you trying to achieve? And we have a process called a discover and define, which will essentially allow us to build a shared understanding of the problem or problems that you're trying to solve, but also generate ideas and solutions to help solve that problem or problems. And then we look to validate the concept or concepts, and then look at validating features and functionality, but against real users, so that, you know, you might have the best idea in the world. I don't want to say that to you, because if I'm not your end user, if I'm not in your target audience, then it shouldn't mean anything, right? You've got to go out and speak to real users. And we've had a number of years that we've been doing or following this process now, and it's tried and tested, because if you want to get traction in the App Store, if you want app downloads, if you want engagement, this is the kind of process that you need to go through. And it is a very iterative process. So, you know, you put a prototype in front of a few users, you'll need to change it, iterate it based on their feedback, but you will eventually get to a point that, you know, right, actually, we're clear in terms of what we need the feature list to be for the MVP, so the minimum viable product. At the end of that phase, if you like, you'll have a validated prototype and a shared understanding of the feature set for the MVP, so the minimum viable product. But you'll also have a list of user stories and, more importantly, and this often gets missed, acceptance criteria. And that's been put in place to protect the client and to protect ourselves, to ensure that everyone has the right understanding of the feature set that we're building and what we're trying to achieve by implementing that feature set. So at the end of that process, everyone's clear on what the solution looks like. And then we go into design and development. So, you know, the first part of that is it will go in with the design team. They'll look to kind of do a number of rounds or iterations of designs until we get to final designs. And then those final designs will go into development. I think what is really interesting is we involve our developers in that design process. It's implemented by 3 key people. So you have a facilitator, a technical lead, and a design lead. And by having those 3 people involved, it ensures that we can develop and design the best possible solution. You know, you have that technical understanding, you know what is and isn't possible for the budget, if there is a budget in mind. But also you have a creative there that can really push the boundaries and make something look as good as it needs to look. So they really do complement each other. And then you have a facilitator that is that neutral person that brings the best of both worlds together, and helps kind of guide that solution through the process. And it works really well. And I think when you go into design and development, in that design process, we don't leave developers out. You will still have that technical lead go through those designs and then the final designs to make sure, you know, we can build what we're saying we can build. Quite often that doesn't happen, and then what happens is people have these lovely designs and it looks great, but actually it costs a lot of money to build and it's probably not designed in the most efficient way. So these are all considerations that you do need to think about. And then after design, you will go into development, and we do sprints. So at the start of every sprint, we'll have our sprint planning session and we'll prioritise our backlog, and then the guys will go into a sprint. And as I say, you know, in the dream world, clients would be heavily involved in that process. So we would have our product owner there, and they would be able to input and be completely up to speed with what's going on with the project, so that at the end of the first sprint, second sprint, third sprint, there are no surprises, and then they know what exactly is going on. I think ultimately we, you know, every client wants to aspire to working in an agile way. And we recognise that that is a great way of working, but with the best will in the world, when you're starting a new relationship, new agency, new client relationship, it's really hard to get agile to work, because quite often a client will have a set amount of budget and a set time period, and they need to know what they're getting for the money, which kind of reverts back to waterfall. So if we can have a blend of waterfall and agile, like at the start, and then once we deliver that solution, we have what we call continuous improvement plans, so that we can then aspire to an agile way of working. Because guaranteed, when you develop a product or a solution, at the end of that, you'll have a load of features or a load of ideas that sit in your backlog, and there will be things that you'll need to consider pushing forwards with. But what's great about working with CI plans is you have this backlog that you can then prioritise and look to do those continuous improvement sprints with. And then it becomes working in a much more agile way. But by then you've already built up the trust for both parties, and it seems to be a much more natural way of working. But, you know, be under no illusion, you can't get there overnight. It doesn't always happen quickly. Don't get me wrong, it would be amazing if it did, but I think you have to be realistic and understand, with the best will in the world, it doesn't always happen. The more immersive, the more collaborative the relationship, the better the end result. So for us, what a good partnership looks like is for clients to be heavily involved all the way from start to finish. And, you know, you'll never really finish because you're always trying to continually improve the solution or the product. But I guess we use several systems and tools to help make the relationship more collaborative. So we use Basecamp, for example, to make sure that everyone in the project can kind of keep track of the latest updates, decisions. If anyone has any questions, then people can ask away. I think quite often when you're working with development agencies, clients get shielded from the actual developers themselves or the designers. All communication goes through the project manager, and whilst that's great, and it does mean that your team might be able to work more efficiently in theory, it doesn't always work. And actually sometimes it is more efficient to just go straight to the developers, and as long as you've got that trust in that relationship, there shouldn't be any problems. And I think there are a lot of tools now that enable that working relationship to be much healthier. Clients, we have their teams come in and work with our teams so that it works. I don't know, it just works really nicely, and they've built up really nice relationships that we see evolve over time. And you know, we want to continuously nurture those relationships to make sure we're getting and we're delivering the best value possible. So Basecamp is a project management tool, and it's something that we use quite heavily here at Three-Sided Cube. By where we set up a project and all communication for that project goes through Basecamp. All the documents are uploaded. We can set activities and to-dos, assign them to project members, and it's a great way of keeping track on the progress of projects. Mm-hmm. I think quite often, you know, you were referring to a more traditional way of working where a client would come in and brief, and then they come in and see the end result. But actually, you need to kind of follow that process all the way throughout and ensure that, you know, it is what you're expecting and it is what you need it to be, and it is delivering against the audience that you need it to deliver against. No one likes the shock at the end when it's something completely different. So I think by being involved at certain points throughout the project or throughout the project is very beneficial for the client.